Good evening and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to Sussex to join me in my little campsite here, the log cabin behind me. I'm pleased that this Sing with Nightingales live is finally back in our base camp home. Last week we were in the woods for shelter, and now we have blue skies and songs of birds all around us, and it's really wonderful to be here around this fire. This is where it all began. Really so happy to have you here. My name's Sam Lee, and for the next several 45 minutes or so we're going to be going on a journey of songs and stories all around the Nightingale. Welcome to all of you who, wherever you are. I know many of you are dialing in and watching this from far and wide, and it'd be great to hear on the live chat who you are, where you're coming from. We've had people as far away as Johannesburg and Australia and Los Angeles, and even in Hastings, just down the road. So please do keep chatting with us. This is a production put on by the Nest Collective as part of our Nestflix series of digital online events, bringing nature and music to you. And what an amazing moment to be here and dialing in with you. I don't know where you are, what your situation is, whether you're at home, whether you're all in lockdown, whether you've been able to get out a little bit, but we are in absolute peak songbird time at the moment, and you can probably hear from around me the extraordinary cacophony, the biophony of birds, of song thrushes and blackbirds and robins and blackcaps over there, and they're all going absolutely crazy in readiment for the night. And as it's going to get darker, we're going to draw in close around this fire. I might have to keep putting some wood on it, and go into a bit of a journey about the great singer that is the Nightingale. Tonight would have been round this fire with a group of you, as we do this time of year. We have 6 weeks of field events where we have 30 people a night. Alas, that's not possible at the moment. So I'm coming to you this way, and for those of you who couldn't be there, be here, I should say, I'm really pleased that you're still joining us. And those who are just discovering this, you are welcome to this circle as well. Tonight is basically running on the generosity and the donations of you supporters and viewers and people who had tickets and are sticking with us and enjoying these live streams. Today is a public stream, and for the next few days, for the rest of this week till Saturday, there'll be the more detailed stories around the fire, with me going into much more intimacy of the life and times of the Nightingale for those who've donated or supported. And anything you can offer, we appreciate, and we'll give you access to them. We have a whole last week's series that we've gone into, and more on that later. I wanted to start by sharing a little bit of thought on the evening chorus, because right now, really within the last 10 minutes before I started chatting with you, the birds just suddenly rose up, and they do this twice a day, the dawn chorus and the evening chorus, the evening song. And I wanted to kind of paint a picture of the kind of trajectory of birdsong and this wave that we're experiencing of sound. The cluckings of a pheasant back there as well. Birds are incredibly in tune with the changes and the circulation of the earth, the rotation of the earth, and the changes in light and the coming in of the morning. And I want to invite you to imagine if you were to take a sudden journey up off this planet in a spaceship, for instance, high up into the atmosphere, looking down on Earth, spinning round, and as she rotates, you'll see that shadow line of darkness moving into nighttime, taking over the land as it moves around. And likewise, at the other side of the Earth is the opposite, is the breaking of light on the horizon and dawn coming. If you imagine that you were to be able to listen down onto that line, that moving perimeter of that margin between day and night and those gradations. If you were to kind of be able to hear what was going on over the land surface, what you'd have is in the morning, just before the light is starting to arrive on the horizon, a sudden welling up of birdsong in preparation, well aware that the day is about to break. And as the light just starts to eke out into a kind of twilight, into a morning, before the sun is even anywhere near breaking over the horizon, there's this enormous rise in the sound of birds awakening. And they're doing that utterly in tune. If you were to listen down from space, you'd see it was like a tidal wave, like a tidal bore that's charging across the country. And the same thing with the evening. So where we are right now in Sussex, we're really growing into that peak evening song. And if you were to head out east, let's say to central Germany or Poland, for instance, it's probably darkness by there and all the birds have gone quiet. Yet in Western Ireland, it might still be a lot brighter and the sun might still be above the horizon and the birds haven't arrived. So there's a very dynamic flow of this rising song. And you can see those two sonic tidal waves that are charging across the land masses for evening and morning too. So just giving you an idea of how in tune birds are with the state of play of the day and the night and where it is. And what we've got is an amazing conversation going on here, interspecies conversation of different birds telling each other to one another who they are, where they are. I'm here, and this is my territory, and really starting to really affirm their home, because it is the night time where a lot of the migrating birds are arriving over spring, and most of our migrants have arrived now, but also where those that are looking for territories are moving around at night because it's safer to move. And birds are really starting to mark out where they are, and they do that rise up in the morning to say, I'm still here and I've survived the night. So this wonderful conversation, of which the nightingale is very much part of that discourse, although the nightingale holds himself in a very different place, because he's not a member of the evening chorus and the morning chorus at all, though he'll sing during the day. And I say it's the hymn because it's most of the passerines that we're hearing, that the passeriform, the songbirds, the perching birds, and that can go from crows and herons all the way down to chaffinches and warblers and crows. They're all part of the passerine family, and they're great singers. The nightingale sits slightly outside of that routine. For his time comes, as I've said already, and as you probably know, at night time, once darkness has fallen and Venus is brightly flashing through and the moon is high as it will be tonight. We've got a one phase off full moon, which is just extraordinary to have such a clear night. No torches needed this evening. And we will be timing ourselves to coincide with the nightingales, who will be rising up around 10 o'clock, as they have been every night here. And after we've finished here, we'll be going into the audio stream there later on. So join us, because we have got the amazing music of Johnny Byers coming up. No stranger to the nightingale. And so the nightingale is like all birds, using the same apparatus and method of singing, yet he has an extraordinary quality of song. And before I dive into that, I want to sing a little song about birds and the beauty of them and the attractiveness of them. And this is an old Sussex song called Blackbirds and Thrushes. And we had a song thrush right up the top of this ash tree. Had a greater spotted woodpecker as well earlier on today. But this is a song of love in the woods. It's called Blackbirds and Thrushes. If women could sing like blackbirds and thrushes, if women could sing like blackbirds and thrushes, how many young men would dive in them bushes, sing fal-de-ral, fal-de-ral, fal-lal all day. If women could run like hares on the common, if women could run like hares on the common, how many young men would ride horses, go hunting? Sing fal-de-ral, fal-de-ral, fal-lal-lal day. If women could grow like reeds and the rushes, if women could grow like reeds and the rushes, how many young men would take scythes and go cutting? Sing fal-de-dal, fal-de-dal, fal-lal-lal day. If women could swim like fish in the river, if women could swim like fish in the river, how many young men would dive in and run after? Sing fal-de-dal, fal-de-dal, fal-lal-lal day. It's only a little one, but it's a very old song that goes back, God, how many hundreds of years, I don't know. I learnt it from an old singer called Dickie Lashbrook, who was recorded in the 50s on wax cylinders and old reel-to-reel tape recorders. And it has a very interesting kind of root to it about this idea of transmogrification, transformation of human beings becoming wild creatures and animals. And although it's very playful and sexual, it connects in with a much older idea of that amorphousness of humans and the natural world, where we could imagine ourselves into the birds and the beasts and the trees and the plants around us. And I think it has a wonderful sense of connection to nature, that, even if in a rather sort of base way nowadays as it's sung. The Nightingale is a singer who is no different to any of us, singing for purely one reason when it comes to the night time, and that's to find a mate. He's singing for sex, and it is just the males of the songbirds that sing. And with a few exceptions, the robin also is a bird that the females will sing throughout the year in different times, and they both share a song. But most of the time, the birds we're hearing right now are all the males. And the nightingale is, once he sparks up, is employing his voice in an absolute virtuosic way, and it's quite a phenomenal feat of bioengineering that a voice can produce the range of sounds and the frequencies and the volume and the scales from such a tiny little brown bird. Nightingales are just petite like little robins, yet their voice can be heard at least a kilometre away, up to a mile on a good, clear, slightly damp night. And where we are right now, although we're a good 20 minutes from the nightingales, we can hear them. I can hear them when I'm sleeping in my tent over there. And the way they do this is through an amazing difference in body build and lung capacities, air sacs. Birds are very different from humans. We have the windpipe that goes down to and branches out to our lungs, and our voice box sits up here in our throats, in our larynxes. We have the larynx. The birds have a very different system, which is that they have what's called a syrinx connected to two different air sacs, and the syrinx essentially sits at the bottom where the branch is out. So there's two voice box capabilities on either branching. So a songbird can indeed produce two songs at the same time. They can also control their breath so that there's air coming into one air sac and out of the other, so that they can actually display continuous song. And you'll see that in birds like the lark, which are very common in these parts of Sussex, down on the downs, just further south. They are well known for just singing all day on the wing, hovering above the land. And the nightingale as well will be able to extend notes where he will start on one air sac and then move over onto the other. And it's an extraordinary thing. And within his range of sounds, there's about 180 different phrases. And we think about 1,200 different sounds that he's able to make. So incredibly adept, and birds that have put all their evolutionary energy into song production, because that is their, as they say, it's their peacock tail, it's the extravagance in their display that they've evolved to have stronger songs, and the stronger the song and the bigger the bill, as in within the name, the megarynchos, Lucinia megarynchos, Lucinia from the word Lucia, lament, and megarynchos meaning great bill, the great sound coming out of his mouth. And that's all part of his display, and the females are looking for the higher quality singer, the one that is showing a greater energetic expenditure, because that's an indication that he's a more suitable mate and will be able to feed chicks and be a more better gene pool to drink from. So that's part of the ability of the nightingale, and they improvise upon their sounds. They have an enormous ability to just completely mix up each phrase, as those of you who've heard already on these series or will be hearing tonight, that phenomenal capacity just to completely invent new phrases and coming back to leitmotifs, regular patterns, but always mixing it up and changing what's coming out. Later on in the series, I'm going to go into more detail about the personalities in the Nightingale songs, for they are immensely sociable and communicative with each other. But that'll be coming later on in the week when we talk about the Blackthorn Blues, the songs of the Blackthorn, and as I call it, the riddle of the Syrinx, how this bit here in the birds works and how they use it. But these nights started due to a chance encounter which I want to go into. I mentioned in the Sunday broadcast a little bit about Beatrice Harrison, and those of you who haven't been to these events or don't know anything about the Singing with Nightingales, it originated in 2014 when I honoured the 90th anniversary of Beatrice Harrison, who is the legendary cello player, Muse of Elgar, who was really the British instance of Nightingale collaborations in this country, though we are not the first country to have Nightingales, and I'm certainly not doing these improvisations with Nightingales every night as an original idea. It's happened for thousands of years across the Northern Hemisphere. And she was simply the person who kind of discovered it in the UK, and she claims quite by accident, but who knows? She was playing lots of European music and well aware of the theme of Nightingales. But when she moved to her home in Surrey, Foyle Riding, she started improvising with her Nightingales. And that led to her asking the BBC whether they would come and do an outside broadcast. And this had never been done for the BBC. So she was managing to convince Lord Reith, the then controller, wound a mile of cable out into her garden, this stunning garden. And there on the 19th of May, radio history was made when the first ever live radio broadcast happened outside of the studio. And it went down in history as quite a phenomenal breakthrough. They stopped the transmission of the Savoy Orpheans, the dance band, playing that night. And I'm hearing the Canada geese sail past, and I'm also seeing a really full moon just popping over the tree line there, rising up, which is very exciting. And that night, about 11:15 on the 19th of May, using these extraordinary Marconi microphones, these brand new high fidelity, the finest sound that really ever been broadcast, the Nightingale and Beatrice playing cello was broadcast to not just the nation but all across the world on the BBC. This is long before television, of course, and it was a sensation. 50,000 letters poured into the BBC in the next day. It was repeated a few weeks later, and it became Nightingale's sensation that she really brought the public's awareness to this extraordinary bird, many of whom hadn't really thought about nightingales for many years, maybe, or hadn't encountered them. But obviously the name of Nightingales was very common, even though many of the songs of Nightingale are sung in Berkeley Square, such as which was written in 1939. It's not as old. Were not yet in public imaginations, but the nightingale exploded into this sort of iconic nighttime bird, and she recorded records with HMV and went on to become the real darling player of the Nightingale, as well as an international cello player. So Beatrice Harrison really pioneered the British awareness of this bird, and did a lot for growing our nation's adoration of birds. Though maybe I wish they wouldn't be so obsessed with pheasant over there. A problem in the environment, which I won't go into now. But also, if I could just ask him to be a little bit quieter. Anyway, we'll carry on. Maybe you can't hear the pheasant too much. They're really going for it tonight. Maybe they like the full moons, pheasants. So this was Beatrice Harrison's contribution to the Nightingale kind of adoration. However, she was certainly not unique. The Nightingale is a national bird in many countries across Europe. In fact, I've got a list here of the names of some of the nightingales in other countries, and how the nightingale is in places like Ukraine. Solovaki is the name for a nightingale, but it's also the name for somebody of the country, somebody from the culture, and indeed names like Slovak is also for the nightingale in Slovakia, which is obviously the name of the country. So I'm just searching in my book here, see if I can find all the European names. It's a wonderful list, but I should have found the page. Here it is. So Hungarian is the Kasalogni. The Irish is the Philomela, which is interesting because that obviously comes from the Greek myth of Philomel and Progne, and the great tragic story of where the nightingale is Philomel is transformed after her terrible encounter. And I won't go into that dark tale of rape and a vicious story of bad behaviour, and really where the nightingale perhaps originates in his and her, because it was thought of as a her in old times, of a bird full of melancholy and sadness. The Croatian is the Slavuj, the Czech is the Slavic, the Danish is the Nachtigall, as in the German, the Nachtigall, same with Scandinavian, which is the nightingale, the night wind, or the wind being the song, the voice of the night, which is really wonderful. The Basque is Rustinyor, and the Albanian is Bilbil, as in from the Turkish and the Persian, which is Bulbul, or the Bilibili. So there's many different names for the nightingale across, in different sort of groupings of names. It's a bird that in many different cultures has taken as a principal role, particularly within the folk song and folklore, and all across Europe. Is extraordinary. So this is a book called The Nightingale Notes on a Songbird, which I've written, will be out next year. Was going to come out this year, but for obvious reasons has been delayed, and go into great detail of that. And I'm just wondering if there's any nice bits in here that would be nice to talk about. The actually one of my favourite names is the Welsh. Even though there are no names for the nightingale in Welsh, the Eos is the Welsh. And Cornish as well, for the bird, and nightingales have kind of entered into folk song, particularly in the UK. But it's interesting how you see, and I'll go into more detail in the next couple of nights about the folklore of the bird and the character that the bird takes as we move from the west of their range. Basically, the England is about as far west as they extend, northwest as they extend down into Spain and Portugal, obviously, and all the way east over to, well, for you, east over to Western Mongolia and into northern India. So that's where the nightingale range is. And as we go further east, they become more and more deeply entwined with pathos and grief and woe, and some of the European sort of poems of the Nightingale are just incredible. I wonder if I could read some of the Greek. The Greek ones are just extraordinary in their agony and the sense of xenitia, that sense of longing. And here's some wonderful ones I want to read over to you. Let me find a nice. Here's the Czech Republic ones. These are wonderful. Oh no. Let's stay in Greece. The nightingale sings. The grove resonates. The one without a lover should look for her. I don't have a lover. I will not look for her. I will rather go right away in the army. And the nightingale is a little bird. Yes, it would reach high. It flew up high on a dry fir tree. It flew up, sat down and sang a song. Tell me, my love, tell me, my dear one. Yes, to whom your folks will give you. They have brought me for you. They do not allow me to want you. Yes, because you do not own any field. There's so many here. This is my favorite. This is called On the Duropolis Plain. This is an Epirean. On the Duropolis Plain, nightingale weeping. Young Yanis lies on the ground, nightingale weeping. He had his horse tethered, nightingale weeping. Rise, master, rise again, nightingale weeping. I can't, poor Grievous, his horse, nightingale weeping. Love has left me wounded. Oh, the Greeks, how they know how to sing a bleeding heart, and wonderful recordings to be heard of the Epirean music, and a lot of nightingale music. In fact, the oldest music in Europe, and later on in the week I'll go into this, but 8,000 years of playing with the nightingale and the nightingale song. It's absolutely extraordinary. I feel I should sing another song maybe for you, and I'll sing a little bit of one of the great English songs. This is the Nightingale. This is Sweet Nightingale. Let me find it for you. My sweetheart comes along, can't you hear the fond song? Oh, the notes of the nightingale flow. Don't you hear the fond tale of the sweet nightingale as he sings in the valley below? As he sings in the valley below. Pretty Betty, don't fail, for I'll carry your pail safe home to your cot as we go. You shall more hear the wail of the sweet nightingale as he sings in the valley below. As he sings in the valley below. Pray let me alone, I have hands of my own, along with you I will not go. For to hear the fond tale of the sweet nightingale, as he sings in the valley below. As he sings in the valley below. Pray sit yourself down with me on the ground, on this bank where the primroses grow. You shall hear the fond tale of the sweet nightingale as he sings in the valley below. As he sings in the valley below. This couple agreed to be married with speed, and soon to the church they did go. Never more they're afraid, for to walk in the shade and to sing in the valley below. Or to sing in the valley below. So that is the Cornish anthem, the Sweet Nightingale. It's a song that really, in Cornwall, is known as the national anthem. And it's a very interesting song because it sounds utterly, wonderfully English, dare I say, and and Cornish too. And that the Cornish will claim it very much as their own. But actually, it's a song that, like the Nightingale, has migrated a very long distance. Nightingales not living in England during the winter, but in sub-Saharan Africa. And Sweet Nightingale has been traced to a song that was brought over to Cornwall by the Cornish tin miners who, when the tin mines were opened up in Germany, were invited to come and work in the early 18th century, went out to Germany to bring their expertise and skills as tin miners, and there learnt that song that was a German folk song. And it came over, it travelled back with them when they returned home, and got taken up, and suddenly sounds like an absolute local song completely, which is just incredible. And so it's wonderful that naturalising of a song, which is so much the way music goes, and music obviously travels throughout the globe. As it is, it's the one thing that we can carry when we move with nothing but our culture, and it's the same with songs. The Nightingales are mostly heard here in the UK, but indeed they can be heard in sub-Saharan Africa, where they're living around Senegal and Guinea-Bissau and Sierra Leone. That is right over the far western side of the continent. That's their home, and it has been documented that the Nightingale will practice certain phrases, but really they save their great song for here. I often wonder really whether the Nightingale is whether it's an English bird, whether he's an English singer or an African singer. They're born here, but they spend half their life in Africa, and obviously their body mass is fueled by the insects of the scrub and the riparian riverbank forests, and they move around. So there's a real quality of that in their song, as you'll hear, that diversity in phrasing and exuberance that doesn't have the modesty of the robin, perhaps, that sort of light trillness. It's a very decadent sound the Nightingale has. And they arrive in this country around April the 7th this year in 2020. Usually around the 12th, 13th, 14th is their general arrival time, and they'll stay here all the way through till end of July, early August. And they will only sing this song that they're famous for about 6 weeks. For the males are satisfied once they found a mate, and they will stop singing, with the exception of a few bursts of songs over a day or two when their eggs are at maturity. And I think that's part of a process of exchange of song through the eggshell into the chick. But if they are not successful, which many of the Nightingales aren't, they will stay singing right through to the end of the May period, into early June even. And then by that point, they quieten down. The continent, however, are very different, and they're very lucky if you're out in Europe. They will sing all through the summer because the temperature difference there allows them to have a much longer breeding season, and the females will have 2 clutches. So they'll lay and hatch and rear, and then they'll mate again, which is pretty incredible. It's partly why the populations in Europe are so much stronger, and also why we're struggling with our numbers so badly here. and such a massive decline of about 87% a year of our nightingales are lost. So we have a shrinking population. Although they're doing very well where we are here in Sussex, this particular place, because of really good land management. These incredible forests, woods of coppice woods of birch and oak and ash and hazel and a lot of hornbeam. And where the blackthorn is that they live, they've been growing in numbers every year I've been here, which is now 6 years. It's our 7th year. So we're up to about 10 males that we've heard, and we hope that they will be successful this year. And they are extraordinary. It's around 10 o'clock they'll start singing, and we'll be tuning in a little bit later. I'm just going to sort of wrap up here now, and I could go on and on and on and talk about the nightingales, but if you do want to hear more of these, I'm going to be going into much more detail over the next few days. We're going to be going deep into English folklore and talking about folk song and nightingales in the UK, and Welsh song and Irish song and Scottish song indeed. And then we're going to be also exploring much more of the European material and folklore, going into Turkey and Persia and some of the stories. Then we will be also talking about conservation efforts and the plight of the nightingale in the very last programme on Saturday, and looking at the environmental situation and some of the causes of their population loss. So that's a bit of a rallying call for the last one. And then, as I mentioned, on Friday night we'll be doing the Riddle of the Syrinx, looking at the song and the importance of birdsong in culture and bird communication. So those are the chapters of the next few nights, and those nights are from, as tonight, 8:30 onwards. And if you donated or gifted or had a ticket for the events, then you will have the private link to how to find them on the Nest Collective website. I just want to end this by saying thank you so much for tuning in and being part of this and joining me round the fire to sing with nightingales live at home. This is not how we'd want to be doing it, and I hope come April next year, 2021, we'll be back here with you guys, all of you sitting in a circle around here. It's so much more wonderful when there's I'm shoulder to shoulder with you, and we can shake hands and hug and cuddle up when it gets cold. And you can find out more about those events that we do on the website, Nest Collective, Sing with Nightingales. Another thing to say is if you have kids or you know people with kids who want to learn more about some of the more playful and childlike connections to the nightingale, I will be doing on the 9th of this month, on Saturday the 9th, I'll be broadcasting the Family Sing with Nightingales with adventure games, nature connection games, lighting fires, birdsong identification tests. It's not just for kids. If you want to learn about bird songs, we've got birdsong bingo, how to light fires, and also lots of stories and songs about the nightingale, going into much more of the playful narrative aspect. I also want to say that we've got tonight coming up 10 o'clock, Johnny Byers, not to be forgotten. And if you want to support this project, there is the link below on donations on this YouTube page, and you'll see how you can support us through PayPal, and any donation we really appreciate. And also to just say that we'd love you to share this film audio. You can listen to all of the nighttime broadcasts we've done. We'll be doing 10 broadcasts in total, and they're all there up online for you to hear, including our 3-hour Earth Day, April the 22nd, where we had some extraordinary musicians and poets, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. So please sign up, subscribe, tweet us, Instagram us. We're at Nestfolk, and I'm at Sam Lee Song on all social media. And do stay in touch with all we do. We've got loads of online events coming up on our Netflix series. Before I go, I want to read you just the last little thing, which I'm very fond of, and it's the translation of the Russian story of the donkey and the nightingale. And it's just such a beautiful poem, a sort of fable, Aesop-style fable by Ivan Krylov, translated into the English. And this is just such a wonderful telling of the sort of the high arts and how refined music is often lost on some people, and that great debate about what's good and what isn't. And here it is. Let me see if I can read it in this light firelight. This is The Donkey and the Nightingale. A donkey saw a nightingale sitting by day up in a tree. She looked so insignificant and frail. He wondered, was this really she, whose nighttime song he'd often heard could not be matched by any other bird for sweetness and variety? Madam, said he, I know it's not your favourite hour, but since somehow I've always missed your music up to now, do me a favour, show your power, display your virtuosity. Then I shall know for sure whether your song is all that it's made out to be. She didn't keep him waiting long, but graciously unlocked her throat, and out the notes came, sweet and strong. It wasn't something got by rote, and mindlessly repeated like cuckoo. It was the same song as she always sang, but every time she made it new. And this time she began, in playful mood as if to tease the other inmates of the woods with calls to mimic them, such as the chink, chink of the chaffinch, wide-spaced intervals they'd never manage, spanned by her with ease, and sudden runs and jumps that made you think of fingers skipping nimbly over keys or dancing among strings, then changed her tone and dwindled to a muted, soft, and melancholy strain that seemed to come from further off, as if the bird herself had flown to some dense gloomy thicket to complain. Then, as a flash stream rises after rain until it overflows its banks and makes a flood, so all at once her music rose to such a rapid, urgent throbbing, it seemed to come almost too close for comfort like pulsing in the blood, or someone loved beside you sobbing as much for joy as pain. But what's the good of trying to explain the music of the nightingale? You're bound to fail. Song without words, it spoke of what no words could tell, and cast a spell on all the other birds. The wind dropped, and the grazing flocks and herds lay down and listened too. The shepherds stood entranced, and now and then, as men who knew the power of music to beguile long hours of lonely watching, glanced at one another with a smile. She ceased. The donkey, who had stood there looking down and listening with a frown of concentration brow all creased, now gave his verdict on her voice. Yes, that was quite a pleasant ditty, but it's a pity that you've not met our cock. He makes a really splendid noise when he stands on the dunghill, crowing loud and clear to all his flock. You ought to take a lesson or two for him. To argue would have done no good, and anyhow, she was too proud. In scorn, the little songster bowed her head, and off she flew to make her music in another wood. The donkey's ears are large and long, but he's no connoisseur of song. So that's the Ivan Krylov's fables of the donkey and the nightingale. A wonderful insight into the music you're about to hear later tonight from 10 o'clock. The great prowess of the nightingale, but a he, of course. Now we know it's the male singing. So look, I'm going to end there, but thank you very much for listening. Thank you to the Nest Collective for making this happen. And all you, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Go and have a little break. I'm going to stoke up the fire so it's there for me when I come back afterwards, and wrap up the microphones and start heading down to the Nightingales in preparation for his song and tuning in with Johnny Byers on cello. So please join us then for an amazing concert and the real Nightingale himself. See you a bit later. Many thanks.